Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at our class, not unlocking the closed book. That's on Shabbos. That's not recorded. Which this Shabbos I most probably will be giving class. I'm going to switch to Rabbi Orr, so just FYI on that. But on our class of the pet is mightier than the sword. Before we start, I just want to quickly mention you're all aware of this, and we're not going to elaborate on it. It's not my place to elaborate on it, but we do just have to feel the sorrow of all those that are in tremendous pain in Texas of the catastrophe that happened there. Let's not politicize it. Let's not, think of anything else. Let's just feel the pain of the parents, the siblings, the children, of the teachers, just the whole community, and then everybody. Every human being should just have feelings about when something like this happens. So, our condolences to those that were affected directly or indirectly, to that lost or their children were injured, and may their memory be for a blessing, and may the ones that were injured have a speedy recovery. On that note, let's continue our class. So there's a very interesting, we went through the Halacha on page 264, day 92, right? And we had a very, very interesting discussion, and I'm really loving the discussions that we're having, and I'm so happy you guys are participating, and it's awesome, right? But let's move on now to 265. We didn't have a chance to grow your idealism, to grow, last time. So I just want to talk about this for a minute. Right? I want to ask you guys. Why don't we have a little discussion about this? If you would ask, and each person could be slightly different, but what would be one of the biggest obstacles? One of the biggest obstacles to be able to be strict on lashon hara. Strict is the wrong word. To be able to sustain yourself from not falling to the traps of life of speaking lashon hara or achilas. All right, what would be one of the biggest obstacles that you would say is? Anybody?
Well, I guess what comes to mind is peer pressure, but certainly I would try not to let that be a factor. Ideally.
Okay, very good. So Judy's excellent point, right? Peer pressure, right? Peer pressure is a very big one, right? People talking this and then, you feel like you have to be part of the conversation, right? That 100%, right? That's a tremendous one. Anybody else?
That's one personal. It's so easy to slip. We come to your class, we know it's wrong, and generally we preface by, I know this is lashon hara, but it's like, the Chofetz Chaim said, every time you're in a situation where you can do lashon hara and you abstain, you get many points. So it's constant.
Human nature.
Points in heaven, you mean, right? But so you're right. So you're saying just part of our nature, part of the rolling off the tongue. Sherry, I think you were saying something like that also, right?
Yeah, you don't necessarily think that what you're saying is wrong.
Okay, that's slightly different, right?
Yeah.
Than nature.
Reaction is just human nature.
It's the reaction, and then you said something else. You not necessarily think that it's wrong, meaning to say that we justify ourselves. Well, there's a good reason, and we don't really analyze and look through the details of what we're gonna say or we're gonna listen, right? To see if it really fits in the rules of permitting that it's permitted to say that. Okay, great.
Speaking too soon, just not biting your tongue and think about what you're going to say before you.
Suzette, I think you wanted to say something.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, I was just going to add that sometimes it's also, you may find yourself in a situation where you are seen as an individual who people can confide in. So they automatically come to you with information or, just want an advice that can be lashon hara. So.
Right. So if you're in a position where people, or you have that personality where people feel that they can confide in you, so you're constantly having people coming over to you, not so much the peer pressure of kiddush or things like
right.
that, in a different way of how to be able to, filter what people are telling you, and make sure that you're not listening to Lashon Hara. That's an excellent point. That's actually a very hard one. Great point. Judy, you want to say something else?
The word that came to mind also was similar, I think, to what Sherry said, but ignorant. Sometimes we just don't know the right thing to do or not do. Maybe your question's more related to when you do know.
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
not. It's a very broad stroke question.
Okay.
Not,
So,
anybody else? Any other thoughts? Okay, so you're all saying wonderful things and true things. Wonderful, I don't know if it's the right word because it's the hardship of these things, right? But you're all pointing out excellent points, right? And what I want to talk about today is primarily the difficulty of peer pressure, right? The difficulty of our surroundings, right? The other points are 100%, and those we have to work on. And we spoke about the knowledge, right? That's what we learned through the halachas, right? To make sure. We spoke about, not letting things roll off your tongue. We spoke about learning how to, it's like chew twice before you talk. Take 2 deep breaths before you say something, respond back. We spoke about those ideas also. Today they're talking about the Shmir Salasan times 1,000 equals a revelation, right? It means to say like this. I'm not going to take exactly what they're saying, but the point they're saying. Just look at the first chapter, right, on page 265, and it says like this: when someone decides he wants to improve on Shmir Salasan, Shmir Salasan is a general. Jim, there's tissues in there if you want. In the chapter. There's tissues in the chapter. If someone wants to Shmir Shalashin, as we mentioned, is both watching our mouths or what we hear, both rechilas, right, or lashon hara, right? Either one, whatever is the wrong conduct of speaking or listening to, right, or just foul language in general, right? But for our purpose, we're talking about those laws. He or she sometimes faces a major obstacle. Everyone else, he or she has to build a strength to keep quiet when others are involved in an interesting topic, and perhaps even change locations to avoid hearing what he or she shouldn't hear. The best way to ensure your own growth is to bring others along the journey, as one man discovered, and then it goes through the story, right? And I'm not going to go through the story, right? So I think this is a very important topic to talk about for a minute, right? And it's not only in Shmir Shalashin. This is something that hinders a lot of our growth, right? Each one of us are on our own level where we're holding, right? But this is something that hinders a lot of our growth. It's that peer pressure, right? It's needing to be part of a certain group. It's hanging around and said, and again, they're not bad people or anything like that, but it's being part of a certain group. It's having that certain needing to feel connected to that group. So if it's, being part of that discussion, right? Or if it's, going to a certain restaurant, which, you're trying to eat more kosher, and that restaurant's not really a place that you should be eating at, right? You could, I'll only have vegetables, and vegetables are a problem also with bugs and what they cut the knives with, but okay, right? I'll only, right? We try to, sometimes justify something, sometimes not, whatever, my friends are going and that's my group. That's who I want to hang out with. That's who I need to hang out with. Right. So this is something that, and peer pressure is a lot of times looked as a bullying kind of thing. Right. It's really, if you stop and think about it, it might not be the actual definition of peer pressure in the dictionary. Right. But the concept of peer pressure is we do it to ourselves all the time. Right? It's not necessarily other people even pressuring us. We're pressuring ourselves to be part of a group, be part of a certain people, certain friendships, which God forbid, I'm not saying to get rid of friendships, right? But, right, if they are hindering you, right, from your growth, if it's lashon hara or other aspects of our spirituality, Shabbos, kosher, modesty, and a million and one other ideas, right? That is something that we have to reflect internally and say, how am I able to make sure that this doesn't affect me, right? how do I make sure that this doesn't affect my spiritual growth? Right. So in Lashon Hara, right, and in every other aspect of our spirituality. So one idea is that they're bringing is, right, encourage other people to grow, right? So what this person, Zev Bernstein, right? Bernstock, right? He got his community very involved. He got over 1,000 people to sign up to a Chavetz Chaim class, to a Lashon Hara class, like you guys are doing, right? So he got his friends, he got his group, he got his people all involved in this. So that's one way of doing it, right? But that doesn't always work, right? That doesn't always work. They're not interested. This and that. It's hard. And again, not only for Lashon Hara, for anything else, right? You want to eat a little more kosher. You want to be a little more moderate. You want to keep a little more Shabbos. You want to, right? So it's good to get your friends, to start coming to classes, to start, doing things like that. But it doesn't always work that way, right? Because they have their own lives too, and you can't force other people to do things. That goes against our free will, and you won't be able to. And sometimes if you bother them too much, they'll just get upset at you. Right? There's always positive ways of encouraging people by talking about what you do, right? Showing how you do it. There's positive influence, right? And there's positive ways of influencing people. I spoke about this past Shabbos by Shal Shudas. There's a very interesting idea, right? In last week's Torah portion speaks about the Shemitah, right? The sabbatical year. And it speaks about the Yovel, right? The 50th year. So the Yovel, the 50th year, is like the sabbatical year, just more in detail. Also, land returns back to the original owners for selling, and I don't want to get into it, right? But it's 2 years in a row where the farmer cannot plant his field, right? 1 year is, wow, that's a tremendous sacrifice. And I spoke about that in the sermon last Shabbos, right? But, 2 years in a row. And the Torah, very interesting, says that the beginning of the Yovel, right? They'll blow a shofar blast, right? So blow a shofar blast. And the commentary that's like, why are they blowing the shofar? Rosh Hashanah, okay, that's invoking whatever, right? And I don't want to get into the law to Rosh Hashanah why we blow a shofar on Rosh Hashanah, right? But why are we blowing a shofar when Yovel starts? And I saw this beautiful idea from Moshe Feinstein. No, it wasn't from Moshe Feinstein, for someone else, right? That says that, the shofar blast is there to encourage the farmer, to tell him that he's not alone, right? And to make him aware that everybody else is doing this, and everybody else is aware of what this year is. And when you blow a shofar blast, you're announcing it to everybody that, hey, Yovel is starting. Everybody knows. The farmer is not just all by himself. And the farmer's not, maybe I could hide it this year because no one else knows about it, right? No. It's a shofar blast. Everybody, it's out there. It's known, right? And the idea of letting other people know that you're doing positive things, letting other people know that you're working on Lashon Hara, letting other people know that you're working on eating a little more kosher, keeping a little more Shabbos, right? Giving a little more charity, learning a little more, putting mezuzahs on your house, whatever it is, right? There's 1,000,001 mitzvot. Right, 613, but those all are the categories, right? Those are categories, a lot of nuances, not nuances, a lot of things underneath that, right? Not in a bragging way or things like that, but it's important that your friends, your children, your family, right, and your people that you hang around with know that you are working on yourself. Now, if they're not up to it, that's fine. I'm not pressuring them, but there's a positive way. There's a positive thing also of other people knowing that you are growing, right? Number one, they'll know that, and therefore, if they're going out or whatever, they might not invite. Hey, we know that that's probably a place you wouldn't want to go, so they might not invite you, right? You might feel bad that you're not being invited, but it's beneficial for you that you don't feel that pressure of going, right? Number one, they might do that, or they might decide to go somewhere else because they know, even though they themselves might go to that place, but or they might do something on Shabbos or whatever it is, but they know that you're working on that. They'll be respectful to you by working on that, right? And number two, besides that, in the long run, you don't know how it's influenced. People are influenced by their friends, and if they see that how you're keeping your life, and how you're doing your things, especially your children, right? Especially your children, even though they might not do it right now, right? But they'll see a positive attitude towards, taking on things in life, So when they become a little more mature, they become a little older, they might, find some rabbi, some this or some that, or someone to talk to, a good class or something like that. And said, oh, well, my mom or my dad went, to class and things like that. Let me try it out, right? Now that they're more mature, these things stick with us, right? And that's in a positive way, right? And that's one way of dealing with it, right? But the other way of dealing with this pressure, right, is knowing and recognizing the pressure. Right? So many times we just shove it under the rug, right? And we really don't want to deal with it, right? Recognizing and knowing the pressure, right? That you are working on X, Y, and Z. If it's Lashon Hara, right? Or if it's kosher, right? Or if it's Shabbos, if it's modesty, if it's tzedakah, right? If it's putting mezuzahs in your home, if it's wearing a yarmulke more, right? Whatever it may be, right? Whatever it may be, right? You're working on that, right? You have to constantly remind yourself that, hey, there's a reason why I'm doing this, right? I want to get closer to God. I want to build my spirituality. I want to transform my materialistic body into something spiritual. That's eternity. It's forever, right? So I have to remind myself that they're not holding where I'm holding, not better or worse in any way. Let's talk about the individual, right? But my relationship with God, they're not holding there. So I know that I should not feel pressure when they're going to a certain place. I have to work on myself on that. The first step of recognizing, right, is the first step of being able to overcome. And now it's not an easy thing, and this is something where it's a lot easier to say than to do, right? On all aspects that we're talking about, both, being more positive about what you're doing and more open about what you're doing to your friends and your family. Right? Sometimes you feel also like, oh, they might think of me or whatever, right? But no, 99% of the time they respect you. And if they mock you, whatever, so then they're not your really friends. They're not your true friends, right? You have to remember that. Right? But most of the times they'll encourage you and respect you and change things because they want you to be part of their friendship, and they understand that you are growing, and everybody's entitled to grow, right? And number two, right, is also recognizing within yourself. And sometimes, yes, you have to be stronger. You have to overcome that. It's not an easy thing, but recognizing your hardship or changing or those are things that we have to constantly do. So that's this idea of one of the many hardships of Lashon Hara, especially and or any other spiritual growth, right, is this what we quote unquote we'll call peer pressure, right? It's not going to look like peer pressure, right? But it is the pressures of others, friends, family, and things like that, and how to deal with it. Any comments or questions? Okay, you guys are being very easy on me today. Thank you. Right? Okay, so I want to let's just do the quote of the day, and then we'll get to the next halacha. At Sinai, right? Shavuos is right around the corner, right? The holiday of Shavuos is in a week from Saturday night, right? A week from Saturday night. Just a quick reminder that we do have an all-night learning, right? We are full-fledged ahead. We have a great lineup of speakers. We're starting at 12 a.m. 12 a.m. We're going to start with like an open Beit Midrash. Come on over. All right. We're going to have different people learn with different people, have different discussions. It'll be more of a discussion-based kind of learning, right? And then at 1:15, I think, or 1:20, will be our first speaker, right? That will be Rabbi Fish, and then we have a speaker at 2:30, right, till 3:15, and then 3:20 to 4, and then of course I bat fourth. I always bat cleanup, right? And I'll be the fourth speaker at 4:20 a.m. So for the brave ones, right, come on over, right? We'll have a fun time, an awesome time, right? And then after that, we have morning services, which we daven. We do this morning essay with sunrise, which is a tremendous, unbelievable merit to be able to do that. It's considered a very high merit to do the Amidah with sunrise, right? And then after that, I go to sleep, and we'll eat our meal later in the afternoon. Right? But so feel free to join us for all-night Shavuos learning. That's a little plug. But whatever you can make it, if you can make it for an hour. Some people have actually in the past come at like 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. They went to sleep first, and then they come. at 3:30 in the morning and come for a couple hours to learn, right? People have done that also. So whatever works for you, but it's a tremendous thing. So it said at Sinai, so we have to speak about Shavuos for a minute, our plug. So the quote of the day is like this: at Sinai, every angel revealed its secret and its power to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? The Midrash tells us that, right, all the different angels, as Moshe was, ascending into the heavens to receive the Torah from God, right, the spiritual heavens, right, all the angels were in awe, and they all gave Moshe presents. And the presents that they gave Moshe was telling them their power, right, the power that God gave them. Right, because we don't believe in angels or demons or things like that having their own power, right? That's idol worshiping, right? But we believe that God gave these angels certain powers of how they should conduct themselves, and they revealed their secrets to Moshe. And the angel of death, right? The one we're probably most scared of, right? Because we all want to live, right? The angel of death, did too. What did he say? It divulged that the secret is rooted in Lashon Hara, right? The secret, the power of the angel of death, its secret is rooted in Lashon Hara, right? So, we want some encouragement to overcome our challenges of Lashon Hara. Our will to live should trump our desire to gossip. Right, So again, God did not create the world where you do something and lightning strikes. That'll take away our free will. We always have to remember that, right? That's otherwise we would have no free will. Because if that happened, then everybody would have to be a believer, right? And then we would have no free will. So of course, God created in a way where He gives us time to repent, and that's all part of the idea of repenting and tshuva, right? And returning, right? But the angel of death told that that Lashon Hara gives it its power, right? Strengthen it, allows it to go ahead and spread death around the world. So we want to work on something. We want to bring world peace, right? Okay, it's like not going to happen. But okay, only when the Messianic era comes, right? And that will happen. But we want to prevent catastrophes to happen. Right. One of the important things that we have to remember is when we don't speak Lashon Hara, when we control ourselves, that is a tremendous power of allowing ourselves to minimize the power of the Lashon of the evil, the angel of death, right? And other mitzvot also, right? In general, right? But right now we're talking about Lashon Hara. Its main power, and the Chafetz Chaim speaks about this numerous times, right? Lashon Hara is Lashon Hara is associated with the snake, right? A snake is associated with Lashon Hara, and we know the snake is the one that convinced Chava, right, Eve, to eat from the Eitz Hadas, from the tree of life, right, tree of wisdom, right, and that's what brought death into the world, right? So we see that connection also. Right, that Lashon Hara is connected to the snake, which the snake is the one that caused really death in the world, right? And that gave the evil inclination, the angel of death, that power, and we have to always remember that. Any questions or comments before we move to the next halacha? Okay, so we're on day 93. Day 93, page 266. Okay, so a very interesting discussion over here. And this is based off some of the talks that we spoke about last week, right? Based off some of the three categories and that we said what would be considered toelas, right? So just very quickly, the halacha was there are three questions, right, to get whether rechilas qualifies as toelas, right? Does it provide warning that someone is intending to harm another person so that he can prevent it? Does it inform someone that another person is personally harming him so he can put an end to it? For this reason, you may tell your brother-in-law, again, that example. Does it inform someone that another person has harmed him so that the victim can seek restitution, right? So those are the three categories of when one was allowed to say Lashon Hara. Just remember those, right? That was just, you can just take a look at it. It's day 92. All right, so now the case is like this. Your son-in-law, your new son-in-law, right? New son-in-law, not like a 20-year-old son-in-law, but your new son-in-law, right? Or daughter-in-law, right? Your new son-in-law is in an effort to be helpful, right? How many times does that happen? Right? In an effort to be helpful, right? Offers to fix your wife's computer. Ultimately, right? His tinkering actually makes the problem worse, right? This is not an uncommon problem, right? Not necessarily the brother-in-law, right? But or son-in-law, right? Now your wife wants to use the computer and is completely frozen. What happens? He says in a state of annoyance. Should you tell her that your son-in-law tried to fix it? Bum, 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 bum. So again, these are just examples, not necessarily your son-in-law. The reason why it's saying your son-in-law, and remember it's saying your new son-in-law, right? He's new to the family, right? He's trying to be helpful, right? If she's going to be annoyed, right? But her computer was broken by him, right? Is it toelas? Is there no toelas? Right? Is it going to create a masity or not? Right? How big of a masity? Right? Is there compensation that you could get from him? Right? So, what do you guys think? Jim?
Okay, I was gonna wait for a while, but I think this situation is a little bit different than, I read the quote already. I think I know the answer, even though I haven't looked at it. I think the answer says you don't say anything, but that's not my answer.
Okay, what's your
My
answer?
answer is that married couples should not keep secrets from each other. And the husband should say something. He can say anything from, I let our son-in-law try to fix it and it may have made it worse. But I would not keep that a secret because secrets between spouses is not good.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
But okay, that's Jim's opinion. But besides the secrets, he's saying it's because
Otherwise,
reason-
I wouldn't have, I may not have said anything otherwise.
but because it's spouses, there shouldn't be secrets about spouses. Okay, anybody else? Any other thoughts? Or about what Jim said? Go ahead, Suzette.
My thought is, I'm not going to look at the answer, but I guess it's not in agreement with what I'm about to say, which is, I don't think it's Lashon Hara.
Now,
I mean-
how about Rechilas? Remember, Rechilas is creating a masity between two different people. Not Lashon Hara, not saying something negative about someone, but Rechilas, saying something that could create a friction that will create.
I don't know for sure, it could go the other way. Well, our son-in-law tried to
Good.
fix it. Wow, I didn't know he was that talented. Wonderful.
Right. And he's not that talented because he broke it.
No, he didn't break it, it was already.
Yeah, but he
But
made
it
it work.
doesn't need,
But he
what
made
I'm
it work.
saying
He
is
made
I
it-
don't see it that way because we do have strengths and we do have weaknesses. And just because we don't
That's true. But
in my,
that's true. But let's be honest. They're not going to be like, okay, it's a new guy. Why did he try? Why did he try to fix it? Let him just, let the professionals. He's like, did he really think? Okay, we all know how to temper a little bit. All right, it's gonna
that's
create.
called apprenticeship. That's how you learn. So I don't think it's Lashon Hara.
Don't be an
That's-
apprentice on my computer. That's what I was saying.
But I don't
You
think
have all
it
your
is.
files, all your pictures, all your things, right?
I still think that's a stretch in this instance.
Okay.
So I don't think it is. So I would say, I think it's okay to say he tried to fix it. Yeah, it's a little, but I
Okay.
don't think it's Lashon Hara.
Okay. Anybody else?
No.
Second. Anybody else?
Well, I agree with Jim.
You agree with Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. There shouldn't be secrets in between couples. Okay. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right. Cindy?
I'm sure there are secrets between couples. I cannot
Exactly.
believe you.
We'll talk about that in a minute. All right. Cindy? We can't hear you. Cindy, you have to unmute the other phone.
She says she can't, I guess.
Oh, okay. It's okay, you're connecting to audio. Okay, anybody else? When we have, connecting. Cindy, you're connected. You're not connected. No, you're not connected. Okay, I guess we're missing Cindy. Anybody else?
I guess I would tend to say it depends on the situation, possibly. I mean, if it can be done in a positive way, it's one thing, but if it's going to be negative, it's another. I guess the question perhaps is if you don't know how it's going to be perceived, then you have to make a decision.
Okay, okay, that's a nice nice way of presenting it. Anybody else? Okay, Jim wants to add something. Go
Well,
ahead,
I
Jim.
want to add something. As a true husband, maybe one possibility he could say is, honey, I let our son-in-law, it's all my fault. A husband should always start with that. It's all my fault. And I let our son-in-law try to fix it because he seemed to have some skills and I think it made it worse. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's one way of presenting it. Okay, anybody else? Nope. Okay, Cindy, sorry we couldn't get to hear what you had to say.
I'll just say, Rabbi, that, you know, in looking at this, and I know we're speaking on Lashon Hara, but there are other soul traits that, you know, we are tested with each day as well.
Of course.
So if every test is only about Lashon Hara, then where do we get to practice, you know, sympathy or patience or work on all those other things if we're afraid to say anything at all? So for me, I say that in this situation that the husband can say something to his wife, but probably the challenge is, well, maybe she will not respond negatively and she will demonstrate a higher soul trait. So I can't, for me, see that everything has to be about only in the box of Lashon Hara, so that we don't challenge our other soul traits aren't challenged or put to the test.
All right, so let me respond to that right away, and then we'll respond to everything else because you bring out a very good point. 100%. Lashon Hara is one of the things that we have to worry about. And yes, whenever Lashon Hara or Achilles, again, both of those fall into play, you have to deal with it, right? And it's something that we have to work on. Now, we've had scenarios where it went up against other things, honoring our parents, it's something that someone's doing something against the other Torah things or other character traits, other things like that. That's when you are up against two separate things you have to work on. It's not I'm not allowed to put someone else in a position to see if they're going to stand up to the situation. Am I allowed to say something or not allowed to say something if what I might say caused that person to be angry? And there's a likelihood because something happened, right? And there's no reason, there's no toelis, right? You don't have any of those three categories in there, right? So then I'm now allowed to put that person, yes, it's very possible that they'll stand up to the occasion and not get angry, but it's not my place to put that person in that situation. I promise you, Suzette, we are put many times in situations where we have the opportunity, right, to overcome those challenges, right? We pray every day not to be put in a situation of challenge, and we're not allowed to put someone else in a situation of challenge. When we are put in a situation of challenge, that's our place to overcome those challenges. If it's, being a mevater, right, means to say not getting angry, allowing things to roll off our shoulders, right, and everything else from kosher to Shabbos to coming to shul, to not talking in shul, to praying properly, to a million and one things, right? That is when those things, when we are put into that situation, it's incumbent upon us to overcome our challenges and to grow from it. But it's not our place to start putting someone else in a challenge, right? We're not here to put someone else in a challenge. And on the contrary, we have an obligation as much as we can to avoid putting people in challenges, right? It's an obligation. We are not allowed to put people, we're not allowed to say something to someone that will get them angry, besides the prohibition of creating animosity amongst people, right? But also we're not allowed to put that person in the challenge, right? For them now that they have a challenge to get angry or not angry. And we have to do as much as we can, right, to avoid putting people in challenges, right? It's a lifnei iver. You're not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of your friend. It's a verse in the Torah. Lifnei iver lo sitem michshol. You're not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Now, it's literal, but it's also teaching us that we're not allowed to put hardships and difficulties in front of other people. We're not allowed to do that, right? So it's not in my place to say, well, maybe they'll overcome that challenge, and therefore let me give them the opportunity to overcome that challenge, right? To see that they're not going to get angry, right? I'm not allowed to do that. If I have permission to say something because the person will pay for it, or there's more harm that might come in the future, right? So then I'm allowed to say it. Now that person has that challenge to overcome their anger or not overcome their anger, because I had permission to say what I was allowed to say, right? And therefore now it's incumbent upon that person to stand up to the occasion and not to get angry, and to work on that, right? But it's really important to remember, it's not lashon hara trumps all, right? Everything has its rules, but we cannot say that, oh well, let me give that person an opportunity to overcome their challenges. No, that's not how it works, right? That's not how it works in spirituality. God gives us many challenges. Even inclination is extremely strong, and we constantly have challenges, from driving on the streets to being at work, being at home, dealing with our kids, right? Society in general, and we have plenty of challenges to overcome, right? We don't need to add another one onto the equation, right? So a great point you're bringing out. That's something to always reflect on. So anybody else want to add on something before I go ahead, Martha?
I just would like to say that sometimes we like to pick on our son-in-laws or whatever, our children, and they do it with a sense of humor, and that's a separate item. But with this one, I started looking at my computer, and if it would be like me cooking something, and if my husband lets somebody else come in and add something to it without me knowing, balabusta that I'm not exactly, or computer savvy, I think that's where the issue comes. So what if the wife then asks the son-in-law to help? And he says, well, I already did. And because the husband here is the one that's actually doing the work, right? Asking him to do it. The wife didn't know about it. So it is complicated. It's more complicated, I think, in my.
Yeah. So well, that's why they're creating this case, because it's more complicated, and it gives us the opportunity to see what the rules of the halacha. Remember, this is very important in Judaism. It's not, we don't rule by every scenario has to fit the rules. We have the rules of the halacha, right? And when we have a more complicated case, it gives us the opportunity to really expand and really see the extent of the rules, right? And therefore, that's why the Talmud also gives you some weird cases that are so unlikely to ever happen, but it gives you those cases to show you the guidelines of the rules, right? So yes, it is a complicated case. So before we actually even go to the answer, I just want to talk about for what Jim said for a second, and then Marilyn seconded, right? And yes, husbands and wives should not have secrets. I agree, right? But right, there's another idea of sometimes, it is important that you don't always have to say everything, right? You don't always have to say anything, and that's not keeping a secret, right? It's important to remember that that's not keeping a secret. You don't always have to say everything, right? Husbands and wives don't know every aspect and business of their spouse. They don't, and you have to be healthy and realize that, and trust your spouse. Right? That if it's something really important pertaining to the marriage, pertaining to the children, pertaining to our finances, or whatever it is, right? If that's how they work, so then they will, of course, be open with each other and open about their emotions and their feelings and work together, right? But a husband and wife, any husband and wife that needs to know every aspect of the other person, literally every aspect, and can't have anything that the other spouse doesn't know about, right? Again, nothing major, but every time I go by, I know I'm being recorded, but I run into the stores and buy some ice cream or whatever it is. I don't tell my wife I had ice cream. She knows I probably had ice cream once in a while, right? But that's my little treat that I took for myself. So after going, okay, I had ice cream today, right? Okay, I'm talking about something silly, right? But I'm trying to bring out a point. It's important to remember, right, that not secrets doesn't mean, if you're not revealing something, right, that's not necessarily a secret, right? That's not necessarily keeping secrets from each other, right? And as we spoke beforehand, right, sometimes not saying something, and we all know that if we think about our marriage, if you said something, right, that something will explode, or that whole evening will be ruined, and it's not really going to make any difference, right? Sometimes it's better just to the healthy for the marriage is just not to say something, right? Again, there should be no secrets between a husband and wife, but at the same time, sometimes it's the healthiest thing, right? Just to not to say something, because you know what that how your spouse would react to that comment or to that thing, right? That's important to remember, right? Not, God forbid, in any way encouraging secrets between a husband and wife, right? But it's important to remember that by not revealing something sometimes, right, that can be the best thing for your marriage, right? Because it's just gonna ruin that whole evening, because then that's gonna be the whole topic, because you know how the other spouse, how they react to X, Y, and Z. So that's something just to remember, right? On that point, not disagreeing with Jim, right? He has many more years of experience of marriage than I do, right? But I'm just saying that sometimes not saying something is not considered keeping a secret. That being said, right? And so the way the point of the halacha they're trying to bring out of here, and again, there might be little factors that would change it this way or that way, right? But you should not share this information, as it would give your wife a negative feeling towards your son-in-law. Remember, it's a new son-in-law, right? And again, you have to know your wife. If you know your wife, it's easy-go-lucky and things are fine, and you know your wife, you know your spouse. And again, someone said that you have to know your spouse, right? If you know your spouse, it's easy-go-lucky, okay, loving-doving, blah blah blah, and all's good. And okay, so this happened. He tried. Okay, thanks for trying, right? You have those people that have those personalities. So then this doesn't apply, right? Again, this doesn't apply, right? But if you know your spouse, as Martha said, don't mess up with my cooking, right? So you know your spouse. She had a lot of important information. Her she just had a project on there. And she's a wonderful, beautiful, great person, and caring or whatever, but the son-in-law hasn't created enough goodwill yet. I mean, he married your daughter, right? So that's goodwill, right? Right? What else do you need? Right? Got her off your hands, right? Right, there you go, right? Got her off your hands, right? But that all being said, of course, you're not expecting her to, throw books at him, right? But inside, she's gonna have a certain feeling. She's not gonna call him over, to try to help around the house anymore, right? Because he's a lemolo. He tried to fix it. He doesn't know how to do it. Right? Will create again, he hasn't been around, that he's done other things. And they say it's a new son-in-law. It's not someone that's been around for a long time, right? That has proven himself, that he knows how to help, or to be helpful around the house, or right? It will definitely taint the perspective of your wife to the son-in-law, right? Of him, helping around the house, or his eagerness to prove himself, or whatever it is, right? Or being, thinking that he knows how to do everything, right? And again, it's not going to necessarily portray out that she's going to scream at him or whatever it is. And she might still put on a smile and, thank you, right? But that that's how she might feel, right? So then there's no purpose of saying something, right? Why? Right? Because she's not likely to ask him to fix what he did. Now, what will she ask him to pay for the repair, right? So there's no compensation, right? She's not likely gonna. Thank you, Bonnie, for joining us. Right? She's not likely to ask him to fix it, because they're son-in-law, right? Or to come back and fix it again, right? Probably won't do that either, right? And what's it called again? And furthermore, he's not going to have the opportunity to do future damage to the computer, right? There's no purpose for her knowing, right? Right. So, because the computer is ruined already. Judy, I see your hands. What happens if she's going to buy another computer and she will ask him to do it again? Maybe. Okay. So if,
She didn't ask him this
right,
time.
she didn't ask him this time. Jim's bringing out a good point. She didn't ask him this time. She asked you, right? So you won't go and ask them to fix it again, right? So we have Cindy live. Cindy, are you able to talk?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I signed on, came
yay!
back in.
Go ahead, Cindy. I'll stop
So-
talking because we have you live. Go ahead.
Okay. Phew. Remember what I was gonna say. Okay, so when I just reread it, it said that in an effort to help, the son-in-law volunteered. So if this is a new son-in-law and he offered to help, and there was a problem. This is just, if they don't say anything, I mean, it's an opportunity for the mother-in-law to say, thank you so much for trying, but can you, this is what happened. For them to just like push it under the carpet with his effort of trying, it just doesn't feel right. Like they should acknowledge that he tried. It might not have been.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. So there is that opportunity. So you're right. The father, right, the father-in-law, the husband, he should say something. Say, oh, thank you so much for trying. I really appreciate it. Let's, mom's going to be really upset that she did this. Let's just keep this in between us, right? But I really appreciate you trying, and hopefully, something else around the house. I'll ask you to help me build a bed, which hopefully won't be, upside down. No, I'm just kidding. But no, definitely, the father-in-law, the one that knows information, should definitely build him up and encourage him, right? Or
tell him to say something to the mother-in-law, like, I'm so sorry.
That's what I'm saying.
I tried.
You're right, but sometimes you have to know. If she's going to get really upset, right? Even if it's internally, or it's going to taint her. See, again, there's no goodwill in between, right? There's no goodwill. She knows him for 5 minutes, right? Right? He hasn't done anything around. He hasn't helped with anything. It's the first thing, right? So you're right. If she's that personality, which, oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. It's okay. We'll figure it out. There's nothing really, and she's really going to be that way. So then, yeah, okay. But if not, right? So then it's there's no reason to put yourself in a situation, right, where you're going to create someone else being upset at you. There's nothing that could be done, right? It's an important thing, and I've read actually books about a lot of articles. A lot of times people need to say something for themselves, and we spoke about this before. You need to say something to make yourself feel good, right? But what's going to happen is you're just going to create a fight. Right? And there's no reason for a fight. You're going to create someone to be upset at you, right? It's very nice if you feel good now that you got some guilt off your shoulders, but now you created a friction between two people. That is not necessarily the right thing to do. Now, if you did something, you need to apologize, right? And you hurt, and there's ways to fix it up or to not do it again or things like that. So that's one thing, right? But if there's nothing to be done, he knows that he messed up, right? She doesn't know about it, right? He's brand new. He's trying to make a thing in the family, right? His place. There's not necessarily a reason to say something just to make yourself feel better and get guilt off your shoulders.
So what is his response when the wife says, what happened? Does he just look her in the eye and say, I don't know?
Like, so that's a very good question. No, that's a very good question.
Lie?
So think about that.
Then he has to lie.
I'm not saying to lie, but if you remember, we spoke about that 2 weeks ago, was it, or 3 weeks ago? Right? The idea of that there is this lying in Judaism, right, is not necessarily what Webster's dictionary calls lying. Right? If you remember, we spoke about this, right? We had a very long discussion about this, and I should really do like a lunch learn about this, a discussion about this. Right? We find many times Jacob, he lied to his father, right? When he went in to get the blessings, right? God lied to Abraham when Sarah laughed and said, my husband is old, right? So God told Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying that I am old, right? Not that you're old, right? So we do find there has to be guidelines, right? It's guidelines. It's not just what my feeling is. They're guidelines of, yes, sometimes you are allowed to change the scenario or say something that might not be completely the truth, right? But the outcome would be the truth. And again, I'm saying right now it has to have guidelines, and it's a whole class going through it and breaking it down. But we do find there are times that you're allowed to, change this a little bit to make sure that you prevent from rechilas, right? From creating a masa between people. So, what should the father say? He could say, "Listen, I tamper with it. I'm so sorry. I tamper with it, and I just couldn't fix it, and it got worse, right? I tried to fix it, and I tried, and I'm so sorry, right? You know,
If she asked.
right? If she asked
Yeah.
point blank to this, say, you know, and you could
Or
even,
say, I don't know.
and you could even, you know, you could even change the wording a little bit, not to, you said, you know, we tried, and people don't pick on it, but on your words, so we tried, and, you know, it's, we tried, and, but, you know, either it got worse by us trying, or it's just as we couldn't fix it, and whatever the problem was got worse. I don't know, but we tried. You can add those words in. She doesn't know who's we, right? And she doesn't have to know who's we, right? There's ways of saying it, right? That you know, you're not selling your son-in-law on, you know, under the bus, right? But at the same time, you know, you're making her aware that there was a trying, and you can say we, you know, and if she, you know, because if she finds out later, right, somehow, right, but you can say we, you know, we tried, right? Who's we? She's not gonna, I mean, unless it's really, no, it's not necessarily, right?
I would say.
Yes.
Okay, I hear.
Who's we?
Who's we? Okay, so then,
Who's we?
right, so then don't say we, right? Don't say we.
My computer doesn't work.
Right? Your computer doesn't work. I'm not looking to fix it.
No. That's what I would say. What do you mean? I would be frustrated. Like,
Right?
what
No,
do you mean?
100%. And that's what
Who?
I'm saying. You'll be very frustrated, even if it's a son-in-law, whatever it is. You'll still be very frustrated, right? And therefore, one
Yeah.
has to be very careful, right? Again, since none of if you know, there's something to do about it, right? Or if let's say you took it to a friend or whatever it is, and you know, and then you could say, hey, listen, you know, you said you could fix this and you didn't, so, and you made it worse. Right? Could you pay for the, you know, taking it to, you know, to a real place to get fixed? You know, you said you could do this, you know. So then if there's something that you could get monetarily out of the person, then of course you're allowed to say something, right? That's or, you know, or it's something that, you know, preventing from harm happening again, right? So then of course you could say something. Those are the categories, but otherwise, we said, you see how far Torah goes of making sure that there's, to prevent friction amongst people, and especially amongst the Jewish people and amongst family and friends, right? But amongst people in general, see how far the Torah holds, how strong this idea is of unity, of being united and not being fractured, and creating, even creating small fractures. That small fractures always lead to bigger fractures, right? You see how far the Torah goes and how important the Torah feels that this is. Right, that you're even allowed to change your wording a little bit, or just say, I don't know, sorry, I don't know what happened. You know, I tried, whatever. Could be the whatever was originally. You know, it just got worse. Something inside the computer. You know, I pressed a couple buttons. You see how far the Torah goes. That the importance of two people. You know, not creating friction between people, and that's a lesson to us. Right? We so many times don't realize we say something with this, with that, right? We have to be so careful, right, to make sure that we prevent friction happening between people. On that note, we are going to stop. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to turn off the recording. Just a quick reminder that there is class next Wednesday. And join us for all night Shavuos learning. A flyer is going to be on the Yitzchayim WhatsApp group. It'll be on Facebook. So feel free to share the flyer with friends and family, and we look forward to seeing you all.